The pairing of Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks was a couple that never really sat right with me, and recently I started to ask why. I looked at every aspect of their relationship timeline, both from the 7 books and in extended stories that J.K. Rowling wrote past the novels, and I decided to take a look at all of it and try and figure out what's so off about them for me. Welcome to Movie Flame, I'm Morgan Ross, and today I am going to dive into why Lupin and Tonks never should have been together. If you enjoy this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help to grow and sustain the channel. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media pages, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now, let's get into it. I think we need to start by looking at Remus himself, which makes sense considering he was born 13 years before Nymphadora, which is definitely something that should be a bit of a red flag. I mean, when Dora was born, Remus was already in his 3rd year of Hogwarts. Let that sink in. Remus grew up with parents Lyle and Hope, who truly loved one another, and when their son became a werewolf at just the age of 5 years old, they did whatever they could to stick by one another and did everything to keep their family together. That's a sign of a good relationship, which Remus was exposed to in his early childhood. Meanwhile, if we look at Tonks' parents, there's a similar theme. Andromeda was forbidden to be with Ted Tonks because she was from the noble house of Black while he was a Muggle-born. She was expected to continue the pure bloodline, but Andromeda loved Ted so much that she turned her back on her family, and this led to her being completely exiled from the Blacks. Andromeda and Ted then had a daughter Nymphadora and raised her in a home filled with love and acceptance, which I think is a big reason why Dora felt justified in wanting to be with Remus despite what he was. So, both Remus and Dora came from loving parents who had healthy relationships. However, the only difference is that Remus had an incredibly difficult upbringing, never being able to talk to or hang out with other kids, being locked away every full moon, and going through excruciating transformations every month. Meanwhile, Nymphadora had a pretty normal and easy childhood. And I think the trauma that Remus suffered is a big factor as to why their relationship would be difficult. Tonks was ready for love like her parents had, but Remus was raised to have his guard up, be secretive, and to hide away. And this translated to his very hard and personal struggle in adulthood. Remus is not the only one that goes through personal struggles. We all face something hard in life, which can lead to bad habits to help us cope. For me, I've turned to Pflugh, which was designed to help people quit vaping and smoking. However, I've found it to be incredibly helpful outside of being a transition from nicotine addiction. I've recently been using it to fight off food cravings. With all the new content coming out that I'm covering on this channel, I work long hours, have a 1-year-old baby, and I'm often pretty stressed. And while me, and I know many others out there, might turn to food for comfort, Pflugh has helped me a lot, and has actually helped me lose 7 pounds. And that's just one example of so many other bad habits out there. Pflugh has no nicotine, no batteries, no vapor. It's just a weighted, twisty, fidget-friendly tool that gives your hand something better to reach for when cravings show up. It's simple, natural, and honestly kind of genius. Some of my favorite flavors being raspberry and crisp mint. If you're ready to break the habit, now's a great time to try Pflugh. Right now, when you grab a journey pack, you'll get a free Pflugh topper just for using my code MovieFlame. The Pflugh topper adds a soft, replaceable, chewable mouthpiece, giving your mouth something safe to chew when cravings hit. Go check it out for yourself. Now, back to the show. Remus was ashamed of who and what he was, and because of this, he felt that everyone would desert him as soon as they discovered he was a werewolf. However, when he went to Hogwarts, 4 people proved him wrong. First, Albus Dumbledore, who allowed him to come to school and believed he should have a normal childhood despite what he was. And then there was Remus's best friends, James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew. But when they approached him, Lupin did what he was raised to do. Lie, give excuses, and try to distance himself from them so they couldn't get close enough to figure out the truth and abandon him. However, they were persistent, and when he finally admitted what he was, they did the complete opposite of what Remus thought they would do. They accepted him, just as Dumbledore had done. And not only that, but they made Lupin's transformations not only bearable, but the best times of his life when they turned into animagi so they could be with him while he was a werewolf. And another person joined those that accepted him as well, Lily Evans, who went on to be James's girlfriend. These 5 people gave Lupin hope that things would be like this forever, that he would always be accepted. While Remus watched Lily and James get married and have their son Harry, he had fully accepted that he would never live that life, which we would find out in an extended story past the books. And that was fine by him because of those people around him. He did not need a wife and kids as long as he had his friends. But all of that fell apart in one night. At the end of the First Wizarding War, James and Lily were murdered. He thought that Peter was killed, and he saw Sirius Black, a man he thought he knew, be shipped off to Azkaban, responsible for all 3 of their deaths. In one night, everyone who had once accepted Remus was gone. This was one of the most traumatic events of Remus's already troubled life. His friends meant even more to him than to other people, because he had long since accepted the fact that most people would treat him as untouchable, and that there could be no possibility of marrying and having children. The only thing that made being single and not fathering a child bearable was gone, and things only got worse from there. Without his friends and without the Order, he was in the real world, and the real world did not treat him the way his friends did. He had to watch as his previous comrades in the Order returned to busy lives with families, while Remus was all alone in a world that despised him for his very existence. And if that wasn't enough, his mother Hope died around this time as well. Remus shut down from the tragedy of losing everybody, and I think these events made him close everyone off, never wanting to feel this kind of heartbreak again, which I think plays a role in his relationship with Dora later on. And this was clear almost immediately. While Remus's father Lyle was always delighted to see his son, Remus refused to endanger his father's peaceful existence by returning to live with him. He closed himself off from his own father and felt like he wasn't worthy of the man that raised him. That shows you just how messed up his own self-image was. Remus lived hand to mouth, taking jobs that were far below his level of ability, always knowing that he would have to leave them before his pattern of growing sick once a month at the full moon was noticed by his workmates. Once again, he was conditioned to be secretive, closed off, and was ready to leave at a moment's notice. Remus lived like this for well over a decade, until one person from his former bubble of acceptance returned to him, Albus Dumbledore. He offered Remus a job at Hogwarts, and there, Remus found solace again. He met Lily and James's son Harry, and he got his old friend Sirius back as he learned that he was actually innocent and that Peter Pettigrew was the one who betrayed them. About a year later, Voldemort returned, making the Order of the Phoenix reform. And this is where Remus's outlook on life changed. The reformed Order gave Lupin a new bubble of acceptance, with some familiar faces, but also some new faces like Arthur and Molly Weasley, Kingsley, and of course, Nymphadora Tonks. Remus found Dora to be clever, brave, and funny. Remus, so often melancholy and lonely, was first amused, then impressed, then seriously smitten by Dora. However, once again, Remus resorted to what he had been conditioned to do, be closed off and resistant. As said, he had accepted long ago that he would never marry, and on top of that, he was scared of facing the same heartbreak he had when he lost all of his friends all those years ago. However, he had never fallen in love before, and this was harder to fight than he thought. That extended story that I referenced earlier explained Remus's thought process about this. If these feelings had sprung up during a time of peace, Lupin would have simply taken himself off to a new place and a new job. Just like with his own father, he did not want to burden anyone with his existence, including Tonks, and he probably felt that this was doing her a favor. He thought he was making the woman he loved happy. Plus, he told himself that leaving meant he didn't have to endure the pain of watching Tonks fall in love with the handsome young wizard in the Auror office, which was what he expected to happen and what he thought she deserved. However, they were in a time of war, and they were both needed in the Order, so he could not just run away like he would have in the past. Remus kept his feelings to himself though, but he secretly rejoiced every time somebody paired him with Tonks on an overnight mission. And at this point, he thought so low of himself that it had never occurred to Remus that Tonks could return his feelings. He had become so used to considering himself unclean and unworthy. Eventually, their feelings for one another came to the surface, and honestly, it did not go well. One night when they lay in hiding outside a known Death Eater's house, after about a year of increasingly warm friendship, Tonks made an idle remark about Sirius, saying, "He's still handsome, isn't he? Even after Azkaban." Before he could stop himself, Remus replied bitterly that he supposed she had fallen for his old friend, saying he always got the women. Tonks became angry at this, saying, "You'd know perfectly well who I've fallen for if you weren't too busy feeling sorry for yourself to notice." Now I have to say, Remus's jealousy of Sirius is kind of ridiculous in this situation, considering the fact that Sirius and Tonks were cousins. Not that that stopped the Black family before, Sirius's own parents had been cousins as well. But still, this shows how quick Remus was to put himself below somebody else, even his longtime friend, which is exactly what Tonks was calling him out on. If you weren't too busy feeling sorry for yourself. In a way, Remus was a little selfish while in his own self-loathing, which is a wild thing to say, but I think it's true. And Remus being selfish is a constant pattern in this relationship. While Remus still felt he was unworthy of Dora, his immediate response to what she had said was a happiness he had never experienced in his life. But this was extinguished almost at once by a sense of crushing duty. We see into Remus's thoughts about this, as he told himself he had always known that he could not marry and run the risk of passing on his painful, shameful condition. So Lupin pretended not to understand what Tonks had said, which of course hurt her. She had put herself out there only to be ignored. But that's what Remus did. It was what he had always done, shut people out. Only this time, it came at the cost of hurting the woman he loved. Tonks knew that Lupin loved her back, but that he was refusing to admit it out of mistaken nobility. Lupin ran away from his feelings, avoiding any further excursions with Nymphadora, and he barely talked to her. This obviously made Tonks become desperately unhappy. She was convinced that the man she loved would never willingly spend time with her again, and she really loved this man. So much that her Patronus took the same shape as his, a wolf, which in the wizarding world is a sign that you are absolutely and completely in love with the other person. Eventually, Remus was forced to reunite with her as they fought in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries together, and during this battle, Sirius was killed. This made Lupin shutting Tonks out so much worse, because this loss had reignited the tragedy he had felt over a decade ago. The loss of the last of his school friends during this battle did nothing to soften Remus's increasingly self-destructive attitude. Tonks could only watch in despair as Lupin volunteered to spy for the Order, leaving to live among fellow werewolves to try to persuade them to Dumbledore's side. And this was just straight up selfish of Lupin and sent Tonks into an extreme depression. She realized that Remus would rather risk dying than being with her, which had to sting. Lupin told her that she deserved someone young and whole, and said that she didn't want to date a werewolf who was dangerous, too old for her, and too poor. Tonks, however, told him that she did not care and said that she wanted to be with him, but Lupin still refused. Again, leaving and running away is what he did. And this pattern of behavior is not easy to break. And honestly, I think it made Remus unfit to ever be in a healthy relationship. If Remus wasn't being selfish and only wallowing in his own pain, he would have realized that Nymphadora, the woman he loved, was in pain as well, and she would have wanted the man she loved to be there for her. Sirius's death really messed her up because she felt it was her fault, given the fact that she had lost to Bellatrix, who then went on to take Sirius's life. She of course thought that Remus would want to find comfort with the woman he loved, as they both grieved over the same person. But that's not how Lupin operated, and I think that should have been a sign for Dora to realize that Remus wasn't the man for her. She might have been able to look past him being old, poor, and a werewolf, but even if she did accept that, there were other signs that he would not be a good partner. In fact, there were a lot of signs, and Remus was aware of all of them, which was exactly why he was trying so hard not to be with her. He knew he wasn't fit to be in a relationship. He had always known that, and he had always accepted that. In December, Tonks was invited to Christmas at the Burrow by Molly Weasley, but when she learned that Lupin would be there, she decided to spend Christmas all alone, as she was taking Lupin's feelings into account, knowing that he did not want to see her. Meanwhile, Remus got to be with his friends, not even giving Dora a second thought until Mrs. Weasley called him out for this. This is just another example of him being selfish, even when it came to the woman he loved. Nymphadora should have seen this and walked away, but she didn't. And Remus then showed even more selfish behavior. He ran away from Tonks, continuing to ignore Nymphadora's feelings as he went on dangerous missions among other werewolves. He once again made Tonks feel as though he would rather risk dying than be in her company. And when Tonks heard a rumor that Greyback had attacked someone, she immediately went to Dumbledore with tears in her eyes, scared that it was Remus who was attacked. Much to her relief, it was not. Then we come to the night that everything changed for Lupin and Nymphadora. And the way in which their relationship started might be one of the worst starts to a relationship that I have ever seen. Lupin was basically forced to be with Tonks through peer pressure while he was in a moment of grieving, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. After the Battle of the Astronomy Tower, Remus had lost yet another person he had loved, Albus Dumbledore. There's a quote that says, "Dumbledore had been adored by every member of the Order of the Phoenix, but to Remus, he had represented the sort of kindness, tolerance, and understanding that he had received from nobody in the world outside of his parents and his 3 best friends, and had been the only man ever to offer him a position within normal wizarding society." In the aftermath of the bloody fight, everyone was in the hospital wing with Bill Weasley, who had been mauled by Greyback so badly that his face was unrecognizable. There, Pflugh said that she still loved Bill even though he was attacked by the werewolf. And Tonks took this opportunity to yell at Lupin in front of everyone, saying, "You see, she still wants to marry him even though he's been bitten. She doesn't care." Lupin told her, with an audience I might add, that it was different because Bill would not be a full werewolf. Tonks then yelled at him some more, saying that she didn't care that he was a werewolf and that she's told him that a million times. Lupin stared at the floor, not meeting her eyes, and Mrs. Weasley chimed in, saying that he was being ridiculous, adding that Tonks wanted to be with him and nobody else. Lupin said that this wasn't the time to discuss this, as Dumbledore had just died, which is absolutely valid given how devastating Dumbledore's death was to him. McGonagall chimed in though, saying that Dumbledore would have been happier than anybody to think that there was a little more love in the world. If we really look at this, Remus was ganged up on right after learning that Dumbledore, a father figure to him, was dead, which affected him so much that he literally collapsed when he heard the news. He was incredibly vulnerable, and in that moment, he was peer pressured into being with Nymphadora, as they used Dumbledore as almost a weapon for their peer pressure, saying that Dumbledore would have wanted this. There were valid reasons why Lupin didn't want to be with Nymphadora, and he was rejecting her for her own good. Although he did it in possibly the worst way, hurting her over and over again as he risked his life to avoid even talking to her. But Lupin ended up being right, and his reasons became clear throughout their entire relationship. The two got married shortly after Lupin was peer pressured into being with her, but Remus's fears from before did not extinguish, and they ate Remus up inside, making him want out of the relationship at times. There's a quote that says, "He continued to fear that the stigma attached to him would infect his wife. He swung constantly between elation that he was married to the woman of his dreams and terror of what he might have brought upon them both." Within a few weeks of their marriage, Remus discovered that Tonks was pregnant, and every fear he had came to the surface. When they went to Harry's birthday party, Tonks was described to look radiant, while Remus was described to look unhappy. The way they left the birthday party is also a huge red flag for me. When Lupin found out that the Minister of Magic was coming, he grabbed Tonks by the wrist and forced her to come with him as they left, not even giving her a choice. I'm not gonna lie, if I saw a man do that to a woman in real life, I might actually say something, because that is wild. Lupin was convinced that he had passed on his condition to an innocent child, and that he had condemned Tonks to the same life as his mother, forever moving around, unable to settle, and having to hide her increasingly violent child from sight. Now, I will say, you would think that somebody that was that scared of birthing a child would have used protection. I don't know if that's a thing in the wizarding world though. It must be, right? But moving on, this is where the relationship just falls apart in every aspect. And honestly, this is what Remus had always known would happen. What he did is 10 times worse than what I think even he could have imagined. Instead of Lupin being there to help his wife and unborn son, whom he thought would be a werewolf, he decided to leave and abandon them both. You would think that Remus would stay because he of course knew more about werewolves than anyone, being one himself, so he would know how to go about having a child with the same condition. But he did what he always did. When things got hard, he shut down and ran. Only this time, he was running from somewhere where he was truly needed. But that's what he was conditioned to do, and not to beat a dead horse, but this is why he just wasn't fit to be in a relationship. Tonks was obviously absolutely heartbroken and devastated, and she moved in with her mother. This is just an absolutely terrible thing to do by Remus, and after what I've gone over in this video so far, Tonks clearly deserved better than Remus. But she should have seen that Lupin was way too broken to be in a relationship in the first place. There were so many red flags. It then took a 17-year-old to knock some sense into Lupin after what he had done. To Remus's shock and displeasure, the 17-year-old Harry Potter not only declined his offer to join them on their mission, but became angry and insulting. He told his ex-teacher that he was acting selfishly and irresponsibly, and Remus responded with violence, making Harry fly back and crash into a wall, and then he stormed out of the house without another word. And it also makes me think back to him grabbing his pregnant wife by the wrist and pulling her away without giving her a choice. Another aggressive move. And yeah, Lupin is not looking too great so far. Lupin then decided to go to the leaky cauldron to drink his troubles away, and Rowling said he was fuming while there. Now it makes sense why he would want to go on the mission with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They were the closest thing he had to his former friends who were no longer here, and his friends were the people that made him accept the fact that he would never marry or have children. Going with them would have been an escape from the life he never wanted and never thought he deserved, but is what he got himself into. From day one of this relationship, Lupin regretted being with Tonks, was unhappy, and decided to just run away from their relationship. And that wasn't unexpected because he had been running from her long before they even got together. You see what I mean about them not being a good pairing? And it all comes back to Lupin. He is the reason this relationship did not work. And again, Tonks deserved better. After a few hours of reflection, Remus was forced to accept that his ex-pupil had just taught him a valuable lesson. He realized that James and Lily had stuck with each other and their son Harry. James actively gave his life to protect his wife and son, telling them to run while he held Voldemort off. Meanwhile, Lupin abandoned his wife and son before his son was even born. And his own parents had sacrificed their peace and security to keep their family together while raising a dangerous werewolf, which is what Remus was now too cowardly to do himself. Bitterly ashamed, Remus returned to his wife where he begged for Dora's forgiveness, and he assured her that come what may, he would never leave her again. Just putting my own thoughts in here, if I were Tonks, I would not believe a word he said. Honestly, had things not gone the way they had, I think he would have left again, because that's what he had always been conditioned to do. But we'll never know for sure. For the rest of Tonks' pregnancy though, he was there for them. Remus turned down missions for the Order and made it his first priority to protect his wife and unborn child. They had their baby Teddy Lupin, and Remus realized that he had been freaking out for no reason because his son had no werewolf in him whatsoever. So essentially, he left like a coward for nothing and showed his true colors. Not that Tonks would have taken notice because she ignored every red flag that was served to her on a silver platter. You could argue that Lupin might stay for Teddy this time around, but giving my own opinion, even if he did, I don't think that he and Tonks would have had a healthy relationship. Again though, we'll never know, because Remus and Tonks returned to Hogwarts for the final battle against Voldemort, leaving Teddy in the care of his grandmother, and there, both Remus and Tonks met their end. Their bodies were placed next to each other, and their deaths led to Teddy growing up as an orphan, being raised by his grandmother Andromeda. To me, I think this relationship was doomed from the start, and I think both parties are kind of at fault. Because of everything that Remus had been through, he just wasn't built to be in a healthy relationship, and he knew that going in. Meanwhile, Tonks ignored all the red flags and got herself into a very unhealthy relationship that led to her being abandoned in probably the most crucial time in her life. Though he loved Nymphadora, Remus knew that they never should have been together, and he showed why that should have been the case tenfold with his actions both before they started dating and after. I think Lupin was right. Lupin and Tonks never should have ended up together. Thank you again to Fume for sponsoring this video. Remember, when you grab a journey pack, you'll get a free Fume topper just for using my code MovieFlame. If you enjoyed this video, I have loads of other Harry Potter videos on this channel, like this one where I go over what happened to every member of the original Order of the Phoenix. And over here is the video you'd like most on my channel according to the algorithm, so check those out if you want. That's all I have for you guys today though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.